This is Radio VR. I'm Kels Hetherington in Washington. The UN General Assembly on Thursday passed a non-binding resolution asking the international community not to recognize any change in the legal status of Crimea. The resolution, sponsored by Ukraine, easily garnered the support it required to pass the assembly. Here to discuss all of this is Vasily Shushko. He is our New York correspondent. Hello, Vasily.
Hello, Kels.
Well, why in the world is Ukraine introducing a non-binding resolution? What's the point if it's non-binding?
Well, I mean, it isn't binding, but it is symbolic, and I think that was the point here for the key players involved in this ongoing conflict, really to sort of flaunt the international support that is being received here. For Western countries and for Ukraine, today's vote certainly shows that the majority of the international community supports them and believes that this referendum in Crimea was essentially illegal. For Russia, on the other hand, it shows that it's not really as isolated as the West makes it out to be, that it does have at least 10 other nations that do support the referendum. And in this vote, it was 100 in favor, it was 11 against, but there were, of course, also 58 abstentions. So it was quite a lot of people in support, a lot of nations in support, very few that were not in support of this referendum. But of course, you have that large abstaining number, and perhaps those are the countries that didn't want the situation to develop into a sort of East versus West debacle.
Oh, Vasily, were there any notable abstentions in today's vote?
I mean, there were a few. You had countries such as Israel that abstained. You also had a lot of the former Soviet republics, Russian neighbors that abstained. And I mean, really what it comes down to is simply countries that said they don't want to choose, because ultimately this comes down to a decision between East and West. One of the 58 nations that abstained was Algeria. The Algerian UN representative said following the vote that a yes or no vote would condoning the conflict and wouldn't help in easing the standoff between the East and the West. Russia's UN envoy, Vitaly Churkin, said something similar. He said the resolution is, quote, confrontational in nature. The draft seeks to put into question the referendum in Crimea. It would be counterproductive to challenge that. And, I mean, Kels, this is sort of a symbolic vote, like I said, likely won't change anything that has happened in Crimea.
But it might get the ball rolling, Vasily. It might get the ball rolling and garner more media attention for this. And that's probably what the Ukrainians wanted when they introduced this. Now, Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and with that position comes veto authority. Does this mean it would be virtually impossible for any real resolution on the subject of Ukraine and Crimea to pass the Security Council?
Well, it depends what you mean by real. Of course, if they draft up a resolution that, has language in it that can be agreed by all countries, sure, it would pass. But a resolution with any sort of language that describes Crimea, the referendum in Crimea as illegal, that undoubtedly would never pass, because you have countries, like you said, like Russia, that would veto the bill. And I can't imagine something like this happening. I mean, we do know that the Security Council is convening tomorrow to discuss the situation in Crimea. What they will discuss, we don't exactly know. But look, this resolution that passed the General Assembly today was presented to the Security Council earlier this month, and it didn't pass. And we can't expect that something like this would pass. And of course, unless there's language that is, I guess, less language about some specifics regarding Crimea. I could imagine a referendum that says, look, keep outside nations out of Ukraine and put in some observers. I could imagine a referendum like that passing, but nothing with any sort of language that would perhaps, pertaining to Crimea, I can't imagine that
But
passing.
Vasily,
the
even if
Security
something
Council.
did pass the Security Council, Russia, as a permanent member of the Security Council, would have veto authority. Am I correct on that?
Well, it would have veto authority, yes.
So it wouldn't make any difference if the Security Council passed a resolution stating whatever it wanted to, Russia would just veto it. Isn't that right?
That is right, and you wonder why would a resolution be presented knowing that it would be vetoed in the Security Council. That often enough is done also as a symbolic measure, perhaps maybe to just show that Russia is not willing to cooperate. But, I mean, this all really comes down to the Crimean referendum and was it legal or was it not legal? You have a significant amount of nations that believe it was legal, 11 of them. You have plenty that chose not to answer that question. So that is a debate that is certainly taking place right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Vasily, and we'll be watching carefully to see what comes out of the UN Security Council's meeting tomorrow.
Take care.
In Washington, D.C., for Radio VR, I'm Kels Hetherington.